Welcome aboard, folks, for the Tuesday edition of Freedom Link Radio. I'm Joe Joseph, and alongside me is Gwen Caldwell. And tonight, Gwen, our special guest is Alfred Adask. And what an absolute treat it is to have such a, if you ask me, it's a true American hero. There aren't too many people out there that have the cojones to stand up to the government in a way that he did. And tonight, folks, I love to have him tell his story to you and, give a little insight on what he thinks is going on in the world today. So without further ado, Alfred, you there?
Yes, I am. Nice to be here, Joe.
Fantastic. Well, give the listeners a little background on yourself and what you've been through, because you've been through the ringer, haven't you?
Well, I don't even know if I'd call it a ringer. I mean, there was one occasion where I spent 344 days in a level 5 maximum security jail. All right? And I was based on, there were allegations of 2 felonies. And I had been arrested without warrant down here at Dallas. And I was ultimately extradited to Missouri and held there for a total of 344 days. And then they just released me. In fact, I've never been charged with a crime, and I've never been convicted of a crime, but I did spend almost a year in the slammer. Well, people would say you've been through the ringer, but the truth of the matter was that episode in that jail, and I don't wish to go back, but I can tell you that it was a great blessing. I went into that jail, and I thought my faith was fairly strong. And when I got out of that jail, my faith was 2 or 3 times stronger than it was when I walked in the door.
Yeah, I imagine.
It was one of the most fertile intellectual periods of my life. I learned more in that jail than I probably have in a comparable period ever before in my life. So sometimes it might look like you're going through the ringer. But sometimes the ringer is a blessing.
Yeah, you're right.
And it's the sort of thing where the good Lord, he provides blessings in ways that are sometimes,
He can certainly help you make the most out of a situation, can he?
Yeah, he can, but it's there's the old joke about the Jews who's saying, now wait a second. He's talking to God, and he says the Muslims are going to get all the oil, and we have to cut off the end of our what? Sometimes the blessing is a little hard to understand when you first.
Yeah, sure, of course.
What? But it works out.
So what did now you had a business that, were you manufacturing colloidal silver, or were you distributing?
In fact, no, I had nothing to do with the manufacture and distribution of colloidal silver, but a man had heard me on the radio program.
Mm-hmm.
He was involved in the manufacture and distribution of colloidal silver.
Oh.
He was one of 6 defendants in a case where the Attorney General of the state of Texas was suing the 6 defendants for the manufacture and distribution of a controlled substance, and the controlled substance was colloidal silver, which...
Unbelievable.
In case your audience doesn't understand, the colloidal silver is an inexpensive antibiotic that consists of distilled water with silver ions in suspension in the water. It's been around for a century or more. I have no idea. What happened is this case started in 2001, where the Attorney General of the state of Texas went after a man, his wife, and their corporation for manufacture and distribution of colloidal silver. They spent $160,000 on attorneys to defend them against the state government. But this case, we know, not just speculation, we know that the case was initiated by the FDA, but they had the Department of State Department of Health Services in Texas, as well as the Attorney General's office, prosecute on behalf of the FDA. For what it's worth, we discovered and got copies of the commission of the Assistant Attorney General and the guy who was representing the Texas Department of State Health Services, and they were both fully commissioned officers of the FDA while they're working as employees of the government of Texas. They were also fully commissioned officers of the FDA, and they were handling this lawsuit on behalf of the FDA. The FDA was they initiated the case, but it appeared to be just Texas. In any case, husband, wife, and their corporation were the first three defendants. They spent $160,000 on attorneys. The attorney fees drove them into bankruptcy. The bankruptcy drove them into divorce. They eventually split and left Texas for parts unknown. But before they did, they sold part of their equipment and some of their supplies to another man in Texas, and he also decided to start manufacturing colloidal silver. Now, he didn't buy their business. Right? Didn't buy their corporation. He just bought some of their stuff. It's as if he went down and they're having a garage sale and he bought a wheelbarrow and he bought a rake and a shovel. And next thing you know, he and his corporation and his trust are added as three more defendants in this case. Now, each one of these defendants has been threatened with fines of $25,000 per day. That's $9 million per year per defendant.
That's unbelievable.
Well, it's interesting, I guarantee you. And they heard me on the radio and they asked if I could help, or the guy Ben Taylor, and he asked if I could help. And I said, well, yeah, maybe, and take a look and so on. And I got involved in the situation, and eventually I volunteered to be fiduciary for his trust. And I did that because it would give me standing to speak at any of the hearings. All right. And I did it also because I wanted to essentially put my money where my mouth is. I did that in part because I didn't want to just sit off the side and say, well, maybe you should do this, maybe you should do that. So I wanted to get into this thing, if you understand. And much to my surprise, the Attorney General turned around and named me as the seventh defendant. I was added in 2000.
Holy moly.
Okay, so now I'm on the hook.
And you had nothing to do with it, really.
I was just fiduciary for his trust. And all this trust did is the trust rented a couple $1,000s worth of desks and furniture to the corporation, and that's all it did. And I wind up, so now I'm threatened. Well, I read the relevant law. And as I've said a bunch of times, there's nothing like being sued for $9 million a year.
A little motivating, huh?
Yeah, this is motivation. You can become a motivational speaker when you get out there and you say, ha, all we need to do is threaten people with a $9 million a year fine, and it motivates them. I read the relevant law, and it involves the manufacture and distribution of a controlled substance. It's the same law that would apply if we were dealing with, at least in civil cases, if we were dealing with the manufacture and distribution of methamphetamine or heroin or cocaine or whatever. And I read the relevant law in the Texas Health and Safety Code, section 431.002, subsection 14. All right? And the relevant law, it goes to the definition of drugs. And in fact, I can read here from part of the Attorney General's lawsuit against this, and it says definition of drug pursuant to state and federal health care. And here the Assistant Attorney General, or the Attorney General of the state of Texas, the case was fronted by an Assistant Attorney General named Raul Noriega, excuse me. And he writes, the key to this case lies in determining, at law and not as a matter of fact, whether the defendant's colloidal products met the definition of drug when mislabeled, falsely advertised, and sold as products intended to treat disease. And then he quotes Texas Health and Safety Code, section 431.002, subsection 14, which provides in pertinent part. And the Attorney General is telling us this is the key to the case.
Boy, what a treat it is to have Alfred Adask on the show. And right before the break, he was getting into the case that the state of Texas had brought up against him and 6 other defendants, and the justification that the state of Texas stated that they had. So go ahead, Alfred, and continue with your story, please.
Well, again, I'm reading. This is what put me on this. It wasn't purely just a matter of research. It was the Attorney General's case said, and they said the key to this case lies in determining at law, not as a matter of fact, whether the defendant's colloidal products met the definition of a drug. Okay, and they provide the definition of a drug as published in the Texas Health and Safety Code. And they also provide the definition of a drug as provided at the federal code at 21 USC section 321 G1. And both of these definitions are virtually identical. And the first time I read this, it says drug means, I'm reading from the Texas Health and Safety Code 431.002 subsection 14. Drug means articles recognized in the official United States Pharmacopoeia National Formulary or any supplement to it, articles designed or intended for use in the diagnosis, cure, mitigation, treatment, or prevention of disease in man or other animals. And then it continues, and it says articles other than food intended to affect the structure of any function of the body of man or other animals. Well, I read that thing, and the first time I saw man or other animals, again, I thought, why, you damn fools, you don't even know what you're writing there. They didn't write man or animals. They wrote man or other animals, and that grammatical structure means they deem man to be an animal. Right?
Unbelievable. I mean, that's an outrage.
Well, it's an outrage, but it's right here in the law.
Right.
Right? And it's been here for a long time. And we'll get into the significance of this in a moment. Well, the political significance, but first, I'm a student of the Bible. I stand to learn a lot. There's more for me to learn than what I know, but I know a little bit. And I know that the Bible tells us that at Genesis 1:26 through 28, it says, on the sixth day, God created man in his image, in God's image, and gave man dominion over the animals.
That he did.
Well, you can't have dominion over the animals if you are an animal.
That's a fact.
All right. Now, the point is that man and man alone is made in God's image, and that man and man alone is given dominion over the animals. Man can't be an animal, and therefore, it was instantly apparent to me that if they're going to treat us as animals, I have a religious freedom defense. I can go back after them under Article 1, Section 6 of the Texas Constitution and the First Amendment, which guarantees a freedom of religion. And I can say, look, as a Christian, my Bible tells me I can't be an animal, and more, you can't pass any damn law that declares me to be an animal. Well, that was the guts of the defense we devised out of this. And in fact, before we were done, we found, and I don't remember the number clearly right now because this goes back to about 5 years ago, we found, my recollection, 23 separate laws at the Texas and federal level that applied in our case that were based on the presumption that the people are animals. Wow. Now, this, again, absolute violation of fundamental principle. This is the second most important principle in the Bible, in my opinion. First principle is Genesis 1:1. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Do you understand what that means, Joe?
That he created the heavens and the earth. That's yes. I mean that. I've heard.
Very few people really do understand. It's kind of a rhetorical question. What it means is by virtue. It's a statement of ownership. It's not just to be. It's not just like a little fairy tale. In the beginning, there was a beautiful young princess, and so. No, that's not what we're talking about. The first statement in the Bible is a statement of legal title. To this day, we honor the concept that the Creator owns whatever he creates. We honor that in terms of copyright laws and patent laws. The Creator owns the creation. When they say in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth, it means he owns the whole shebang. It's his to do with as he sees fit. It's not just, in the beginning there was a beautiful princess or something. That's not what this is. It's telling you right up front who owns this place. It's a legal concept, and it's number one in the Bible. Number two, in my opinion, is, again, Genesis 1:26 through 28, which says man and man alone is made in God's image. Second most important principle in the Bible, in my opinion. You can talk to other people. In any case, we also have Declaration of Independence. Declaration of Independence says in its second sentence, we hold these truths to be self-evident